Got it.
I'm also recording it because whatever.
Yeah, we kind of have to. Anyone here?
Let's see. It's just going live. Technically, we're streaming. There you go. All right.
Whoa.
No one's here yet. We're good. Oh God, there is a person that's just not counted in there. Hello.
Uh-oh.
We're gonna wait 3 more minutes in this shit show. Dude, Silas was wrong. It is gallery. Like, we're fine. We don't need OBS.
No, I think we do, because that's how we've got that thing.
We can't play the fancy video.
We should actually get a fancy video. Donate to our Patreon and buy us Ko-fi so that we can pay someone on Fiverr to make us a fancy logo and a fancy video intro.
Silas has a fancy video intro.
I've never seen it. Is it that fancy? I mean,
it's pretty decently done. It's like kind of generic, but
do we have like colors and stuff, like logo and whatever?
I don't know. I don't know that we.
Oh my God, I can see us.
I don't think we fully branded.
Yeah, we're not very branded, that's for sure. Okay,
all the retweets are done. All the things are out. Just a couple of minutes, folks. We just wanted to start early.
I don't know that we forgot that. I can see it.
Yes,
we wanted to start early to make sure that there was nothing wrong with the stream, since we don't have Silas around to do it properly.
We don't have the one person who knows how to use a computer with us today, so yeah, we're winging it a bit more than usual.
But definitely. All right, one more minute, and we'll kick off.
I think less shit show and more shit circus, you know, like this is, we are we're overachieving.
I think, yeah. Where's did you do the doc thing?
So, drop the doc. Yeah, hang on.
I have the official doc one with our fucked up numbers. Let me see if I can fix it.
Yeah,
Aha. All right. There's like 25 folks, which is amazing, because I don't know if the entire industry is like hung over from St. Patty's or what the hell's going on. But I'm really, glad for everybody who's joining. 1 more minute and we'll kick off. Just setting up the doc.
So
you all set?
I've done it. I've dropped the doc.
Amazing.
Why doesn't it have numbers of people on this chat? This is.
It shows up. There's a. All right.
Okay, fuck it.
Kick it off, Grug.
Okay. Hello. So welcome to another special Glasshouse session during the Ukraine war. We're trying to do fairly frequent coverage so that we can keep track of all of the developments in the cybers. There's, a cyber war on, and we want to, not lose that when we just do our less frequent sessions. Unfortunately, everyone else was too scared to talk about the hard-hitting topics that we have today. They all chickened out for, I'm on a plane, I have another booking, various excuses. So it's me, it's Jags. Yeah, it's me, it's Jags. It's 11 a.m. in the morning, or 10 a.m. It's sometime in the morning, and let's do it.
Yeah, so well, thanks for actually jumping on this thing. Everyone's kind of defected. It's bad enough to begin with that we don't have Silas, who actually makes all the magic happen for this thing. So you can see videos of me fumbling, trying to get the stream going. And obviously we don't have the same level of production value or charm that we would have with Silas around. But yes, so you see the doc with all the points. Honestly, there's not much. I don't know how much of an agenda we've had for this one. It's still week 3 or 4, and it's so hard to keep track of the fuck is actually happening.
Yeah. So like there's things that are dragging on, like the Viasat hack, which was like the big cyber war event. Like it matches what cyber war is supposed to be. It was tied into military action. It was sort of big. It's satellites. It's supply chain. It's like denial of service, which even a general can understand. So.
I'm so pissed about that. Like, I feel like we've all but put an open bounty on these routers, and like, dude, if anyone has one, if anyone has access to several, like, I'll get to the point of explicitly saying, like, we'll pay for them. Like, we just want to analyze them. I'm sure, Viasat has retained the proper analysis firm, and I imagine we will eventually see the results. Hopefully, maybe, that's maybe NDA dependent. But with so many thousands of these things bricked around Europe, like, I'm amazed that there aren't a few that can fall off the back of a truck for us to play with, right?
Yeah. So anyway, let people know if they have a bricked device that Jags will buy it from them.
Yeah, I mean, I really didn't want to put American it so blatantly, but yes, many rubles to whomever can provide us. Well, like,
more turnips than you can eat in a day.
I want to take it, and I want to take one of those brick Viasat routers and throw it through a window at the New York Times and like see if they figure out where the cyber war is at that point, right?
Yeah. So, right. So there's that, but I think the big one that's going to come up is going to be the deepfake of Zelensky, which is. So here's my problem with it. The attack was not actually the deepfake being uploaded. The attack is the amount of media attention that deepfakes are going to get as a result of using the deepfake. I mean, that's the point.
It is sort of disinfo 101, right? That at the end of the day, we talked about this the last call, right? It's spaghetti at the wall. You see what works, and then the whole game is amplification. I was honestly much more concerned when I started to see these videos popping up of like would-be volunteers who are like, "Don't come here, it's terrible. They wouldn't let us leave. Yeah. They didn't give us ammo," and it's like, bro. You signed up first. If you're really there, which we have no clue because you show nothing and you give us nothing.
There are, by the way, literally people who have solicited donations to buy kit, taken pictures of themselves at the airport, and then gone and hung out in the woods for days. There's like these 3 dudes in the UK who keep posting pictures of themselves in like
the woods,
UK woods. Like there's no snow on the ground. They're like,
but I mean, that's the point, right? Like, look, you're signing up for a war. Yeah. It's not going to be pretty, and that's something that I think normal Westerners, we have a very hard time understanding that shit is not pretty in some of these places. But for the vets out there, I don't know that we need to tell any war veterans that shit's not going to be pretty. Now, what the fuck is that video? And now it reached the point of amplification where like US politicians are putting it out, the usual, like, the Cambridge 8, the Fox News 8, the like Russian money in American politics, like shining bright. They've all retweeted this thing, right? Like, don't come here, don't volunteer. They'll turn on you if you try to leave. It's like, yeah, it's a fucking war, bro.
Yeah, so like there's funny stuff that I'm pretty sure that if you show up and in 2 days you want to leave, they can't actually force you to go to war, and they don't want you to go to war because someone who's trying to leave is not going to be someone you want next to you in a trench, right? Like you don't.
No one looks favorably on deserters, no matter what.
Yeah. So like I speaking of which, that the Polish deserter that went to Belarus, he was found hanged yesterday.
I didn't even know that had happened.
Yeah, it hasn't been particularly public, but highly likely that was depression as opposed to like suicidal.
Well, wasn't there also? Anyway. This is where I'm scared to talk because I don't know if I'm amplifying bullshit narratives because I don't have the time nor the ability,
Right.
nor the familiarity to figure out what's real or not. But you know, yesterday someone's like, "Oh, here's this model who like criticized whatever, ended up in a suitcase." Like, look, it all sounds like what you would expect.
Right.
It all
Yeah.
sounds plausible, and that's precisely what this information is, right? Like, we got a shitty deep
Yes.
fake, and everyone lost their fucking minds. And look, it's
Right,
fine.
yeah.
It's the first time you finally see a use. Well, not the first
So
time. but
people have been predicting this since I think 2016 or 17. Any day now, it's going to happen, and it finally happened, and it was complete shit, but it happened.
yeah.
You know, like
I mean, this one was shit. If you really wanted to, like, if you really gave it the old college try, like, you could probably
Yeah.
do better.
But I mean, like even the ones that Hollywood has, right? Like in their films are not that, like they're not convincing enough unless contextually, you know, like it doesn't work all that well. But like the problem is that like deepfakes only work if you can get the stream into a place where it makes sense that it would originate from.
Can't be posted on a defaced like news website.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, look, it was a shitty
Look,
production value, but like they went about it
the
the way.
con-op is not. Yeah. Like conceptually, the operation concept, the con-op, was interesting, if not well executed.
Yeah,
So
my
I-
understanding is that page is still defaced, right? Like, so the real issue you have here is like, what is, sorry, last I heard last night, you could only hit it through Russian IP space and it was still defaced. It didn't necessarily hold the video anymore, but it clearly wasn't under the control of the people who were supposed to own the site. The real issue here is, if you put yourself in the shoes of folks in Ukraine trying to fight this, you know, the good fight, the whole point of this is to get people to lay down their arms or just to feel that the battle is done, you know?
Yeah, so it's a contest of will, right? Like it's like basically Putin's will versus the will of the Ukrainian people to keep fighting. And to undermine that will, they're going to do anything they can. And I think that sort of in terms of the information war, like the important thing is they want to, like, if you're Russia, the things that you want to do are undermine the will of the Ukrainians, but also cut them off from the West, because without continual support, then, you know, like the ammunition and the supplies and all of that dries up. And, you know, the money that's going to like keeping people fed and everything, if that vanishes, if that drops, that severely impacts their ability to fight. So that's where I'm going to expect to see.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're super right. I think it brings us back to some of the more interesting elements of the cybers, you know, sort of bringing it back on topic in a sense. It's like there was an article, I don't remember if it was Thomas Fox Brewster, it might have been Forbes, but it may have not been. The chat can correct me, about sort of the heroes in Ukraine that are keeping the internet up.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And
yes.
like,
oh my God, I didn't put that in.
Super interesting article. Obviously, yeah, I mean, absolute fucking heroes. It is obviously a priority for the Russians to like take down these ISPs now, take down these different connections. And one thing they mentioned in there very cheekily is someone in Ukraine that was like helping the Russians have like sort of deniable connections or like phone calls in the country.
Yes, there's that. So there's a guy that got busted, and they called him a hacker, but I don't know. Anyway, so what he had a whole bunch of GSM gateways connected up to 128 SIMs. And that was allowing people to basically call in and then get rerouted over a local anonymous SIM card. So they were using that. They were sending messages saying like, if you like, dear Mayor so-and-so, if you surrender your town and join the Russian side, you know, these are the great things we will do for you. Just, you know, join us. They're sending like, you know, you're all going to lose, this is bad, to like randos. They were sending commands to their fucking forces, which is wild. They were using this guy's hop as a way of interacting with.
I mean, it brings us right back to how absolutely unprepared and garbage the Russian situation is. Like, we had this conversation with far more knowledgeable people on the subject, not just in our first week of morale boosting call, but also the Alperovich Institute's Twitter space. I think a different Rob Lee joined and talked about sort of the radios and how the shit was supposed to work. It's unbelievable how low tech the Russians are. Like OPSEC has gone out the fucking window, like many Russians, and it's just straight up like this dude has some GSM gateways and like calls and texts.
OPSEC so bad that Putin threw it out the fifth window.
It's like they did it. They couldn't even. It's not even Signal, right? Like there are kids. There are people on WhatsApp that have more security than the entire Russian military in Ukraine right now. It's fascinating.
So like there's a bunch of interesting stuff going on with the cybers. That's like part of the problem is that there's no big cyber war that we can see. Like there's no pew pew lasers. We don't have a map. There's no
that kills me. That statement kills me because it's like, we're all in this bullshit narrative of our own making. Like I was this close to trying to draft an op-ed and no one will publish, right? Like just to be like, what the fuck do you mean? There's like the cyber war is there. We just have the wrong idea about the cyber war, right?
Yeah. Well, it turns out that cyber war is not a one-to-one replacement for kinetic war. Like you can't just plug it in as like, what's a thing that like all this talks of like cyber effects operations. That was maybe useful on day one, like that's the Viasat thing.
Right.
But all the other cyber that turns out to be useful, it's much better to disconnect Ukraine from support in the West than it is to like, I don't know, take out Viasat again once more until they figure out how to stop that,
That's where we're going to start feeling it, right? Like the more the Russians settle into their situation, and we talked about some of the financial side or whatever, but the more the Russians settle into their current war situation and people can kind of like lift their heads, the cyber war is going to come to Western Europe. The cyber war is going to come to the US. Like that's when it's going to hit home. It's like it never happened in Ukraine, but oh my God, they took a bank down in US and like now it matters. Like
right. So here's the way that I think it will happen is that at some point someone's going to realize that they've got all these ransomware groups that just need a little bit more direction in what they're doing, and then let them continue to do their thing. Except now, instead of like try and avoid another colonial pipeline, stay away from these sorts of highly critical areas, it's going to be the opposite. It'll be like, look, we know that these are critical things to go after. Anything you get is yours. Take them out for as long as you can. Go wild.
Well,
you'll be doing your country a service. I
think that's why, like, whomever was behind the not the Conti leaks, because those look a little more authentic to me, but the TrickBot leaks, which I think are like, hello, Cyber Command, right? Like, and I'm all for it, but I think it's fucking
greetings, y'all. I am Russian hacker.
Hello, fellow Russian hackers. Like, to me, I'm like, hi, Cyber Command. I'm glad you guys are doing your job, but it's really good in the sense that you're like, look, here's a dossier on every TrickBot operator. Like, good luck. Like, off to the races. Like, where are you guys going to go? And then all of a sudden, you don't have TrickBot sitting around well organized, like ready to go for this sort of, next stage of festivities, right?
Right. So, I mean, much as I think that sort of operation is great, and I, don't think it shouldn't have happened, my thinking is that you can do that sort of op so many times before it loses impact.
Oh, of course.
Right? Like the guys that you get doxxed, it freaks them the fuck out. Then the next guys who get doxxed, they're like, hey, it just like happened to, TrickBot.
Right.
They're fine. So, and then after a while, it loses impact. So I think now it would be particularly difficult, but the FBI should absolutely be pushing for extradition. They should be, contacting the Russians, telling them, these are the people that we believe have been conducting, offensive cyber operations, and at your soonest convenience, please.
Well, did you see? I mean, this got lost in the obvious noise, but like they arrested some dude from the Kaseya hack. Like 2 weeks ago, they extradited him and like got him over, and it was like a 2-month turnaround or something like that.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, that completely got lost. I didn't. That sounds really interesting.
There's
I mean,
so
that's
much
wild.
cyber. There's so much cyber that we
Yeah,
can't even. Yeah,
yeah.
I'll
So,
find the link. I'll post it at some
all
point.
right. So like, here's the thing. Like, a lot of people are saying like, there's no way Russia is going to escalate by cyber attacking Europe, and why wouldn't he? Like, why wouldn't they? If they use ransomware, it's plausible deniability to the point that you don't have guys with like the Talon manual sitting there like going, well, technically this is a violation of, right? And then everyone's going to go like, well, we didn't want to invoke Article 5, but we have to now.
Now we have
It's
to.
a technical. There's been a technical violation, and we are required to start a world war. We have no desire politically. This is it's dead on arrival. However,
we just have
the manual says.
Well, so on that, I feel like I'm actually kind of happy that folks have shown up, or like there's a proper chat, and I kind of feel bad ignoring it. So like there's a couple of points in there. Yes, the guy was in Poland, got extradited from Poland. Hagel says he's a Ukrainian, so I mean that makes a little more sense. Still super interesting.
That's
okay,
yeah.
The other side of this, we talked about this briefly, the whole notion of like intrusion truth, now talking about Chinese activity in Ukraine, and like all these people who just like, I don't remember who said this, and it might have been a derogatory comment in a private call, but that like there's all these fucking China experts who like don't have anything to do right now, and they're like, I bet you China's relevant right now as well. I bet you they're in Ukraine. Like, let's talk about the Chinese activity in Ukraine that no one is seeing, but is for sure there. Like,
yes. But I mean, so like, here's the thing: is like, if I'm China, I'm gonna like this is the day that you bury bad news, right? Like, the world's attention is somewhere else. If you want to go and hack the shit out of the US and have the lowest number of defer guys available, now is that time when whatever you do is just not going to get picked up in the media because it's not interesting. So I feel for like the guys on the China desk at like these CTI firms, where they're desperately trying to say like, well, if you look at a map, yeah, like China is literally less than 3,000 or 4,000 miles away from the battlefront.
And super close. I mean, look, right around the first week, like there was Mustang Panda stuff in Czech Republic. I'm sure they're in Ukraine. Does it fucking matter? No. Like the whole point is like espionage has not stopped. It will not stop, and it definitely didn't stop in Ukraine either. But how is it
needs to pick up
significant?
Like right. And so like the thing is, during a war, the desire to have information on what is going on, like not just what people are thinking, but literally like the fog of war means that there's a high chance that the Chinese do not want to be getting their information about Ukraine from TikTok, like the rest of us.
Right. I'm sorry. When we did Afghanistan, our disastrous Afghanistan pullout, the two that popped up there in the span of hours were, there was shadow pad activity that I want to say whatever Chinese APT and Turla. They both just popped up like magically. Like you think they need to know that's their job. But like what I want to understand, like to me, this is when we see intrusion truth as an obvious offset of some, I'm not going to say a CTI firm, but a group of like threat intel folks who are just singularly focused on China and wanting to be relevant right now. And like, look, I'm all for it. Intrusion Truth's done cool shit. I'm all for them doing the doxing. But like, if you're in a situation where you're like, could someone feed us some stuff so we can keep like jumping up and down on China? It's like, go do your job, do it somewhere else. This isn't your conflict. They're doing fucked up shit in other places. Like, go find it, man. Like, go where it goes.
I mean, there's a lot to do. Like, even though we actually do have a cyber war going on for once, the existing cyber, like, we have a cyber war at home. You don't have to get the Ukraine cyber war. We have cyber war at home.
I mean, look, I'm seeing people point to like tag stuff where Billy talked about Chinese actors going after Ukrainian government. They're there. They're absolutely there. Now, the visibility that TAG has in this particular case, and I'll say that on the basis of what they said about APT28 as well, it's mostly phishing. And it's someone on Gmail is doing Gmail-y things to people on Gmail. And that's fine. I'm not discounting what they found. I'm discounting the importance people want to give other cyber espionage groups being in Ukraine. They've been there forever. They're going to continue to be there until the lights go out. Like, why wouldn't they be there? But does it matter?
Like, that's the thing, is like, it's not like China has deployed cyber units to Ukraine to act as like a fifth column support element to like Russian forward. So like, that's not a thing that is happening. Instead, China has basically stuck its ear to the wall on Ukraine, and it's like, I want to know what's happening in there, And there might be a whole bunch of other people doing that. It does.
How bad is this garbage that the Russians are probably lying to us about before they try to get us involved in it as well, right?
Right. Like, how long is this going to go on for? Like, it's about to collapse, and it just doesn't appear that publicly. Like, all sorts of, like, there's tons of questions that need to be answered that are not going to be addressed by TikTok and Twitter. No. Like,
well, we're on the subject of TAG, and I glossed over this, but one really interesting thing that Billy and TAG put out was about APT28 sort of being involved. There's I'm going to bring this back to CERT-UA, because it's like CERT-UA has been putting out stuff about UA 0056, UA 0051, which is Ghostwriter. So just to put them forward, it's UNC 2589, Ghostwriter, and now they did APT28 very casually. Last week, they're like, APT28 is out here. And you're like, whoa, where have they been? Like, what were they doing? It's like phishing. Like, APT28 has now become
that phishing thing.
Shop. They're the phishing shop now. And it's so sad to see them go from like the big bad, like GRU, with all their malware. And
it's because they cracked that one guy in Siberia, Topov, was it? They cracked, the Obey guy. They cracked him too hard. So they cracked him too hard, and they lost all their capability because like, everyone's like, well, we don't want to be that dude.
I don't think, like, honestly, I don't think it just looks like they were pushed to kind of change their remit. And it's not, and I say that because if you look at the other NSA disclosures about APT28 over the past 2-3 years, it's been like, look, here's some Linux kit that they're using. This is a packer that they're using. Here's some like, normal, like, sort of tunneling or open source apps that they're using. And you're like, well, this looks totally fucking different to what APT28 was. It doesn't mean they're not doing anything, but they have almost gone the route of like, let's be so fucking boring that nobody really gives a shit what we're up to. And I mean, I give it to them because I'm bored. Like, I don't care so much.
Yeah. I mean, when that phishing report came out, I looked at it, and people were trying to say, like, this is big, it's Ukraine cyber. And I'm like, it's phishing. Like, there's phishing emails being sent to people in Europe about Ukraine as like, that was the lure. And like, the desperate attempt to push that as being part of like some cyber war that would fit the paradigm of what these people want, where it's like, European Parliament is being targeted as part of the cyber war in Ukraine. And, it's not like it will be anyway, but that's just regular. That's not anyway. So
that's where the argument comes into like espionage versus cyber war, and like how much this, how bad we are at sort of telling these things apart. And again, our conversations kind of flow in this continuum. We've just gone from ransomware actors to Russian cyber, to where are the Chinese, to phishing, and it's just like, it's one big continuum. The truth is that there are parts of that continuum that are not that objectionable, that are to be expected. It's the espionage side. I'm sure that we're doing it too. What are the things that are actually objectionable? I mean, the Viasat thing is top mind. The wipers are
Yeah,
out, right? Like,
but here's the thing: the only part that's objectionable about it is that they had that spillover into like where was it? Like Germany, they took down turbines, and I think there was like Swiss or somewhere else. Like basically, the fact that they hit civilian stuff outside of their intended target was bad. But otherwise, that is literally like Talon Manual probably says that that's like a class 1 real cyber attack because it had a military focus by military units using military software. You know, like it was real. It was all the things it's supposed to be. You know, that's a textbook example.
Again,
but
we said last time, right? That's where you Article 5 just, you know, we're gonna look away.
Yeah, we didn't want to, war, but we have to now.
Right. Technicality war being what it is. I cut you off. I'm sorry. I just, you know, I find
I wanted to talk about that continuing because I think that's interesting because, as you said, like what we're talking about is like taking criminal groups and making them do war-related activity without changing what they actually do, right? Changing a little bit in their targeting, which they could do organically if they wanted to. They could, you know, by themselves decide to become patriots and to try and aid the war effort in their own way. They don't necessarily need to be tasked to do it, right? So, but if they are, they'll probably be tasked. Let's be reasonable, right? But you know, like, so we've got that. Then we have the military version of, you know, the cyber intelligence stuff, which, you know, intelligence being part of war. But they're just doing lame ass phishing stuff and, you know, using toolkits off of GitHub so that, you know, people doing analysis get bored shitless and just stop caring. Like if the eyes glaze over, then you win. You know?
Cyber war will be open sourced, right?
Brought to you by Cobalt Strike.
Yeah, Microsoft is powering both sides of this conflict. No, I think it brings you the mundane reality of all of this shit, which is it doesn't have to be innovative. It doesn't have to be brilliant. It just has to hit the objectives. The GRU needs information on certain people and organizations, where things are going. I'm sure they're very concerned about what info is making it out of the country and going to where, in their typical like Russian paranoid delusions, I'm sure they're also looking for evidence of like the West and the CIA's involvement in this, that, and the other.
They're looking for German parliament to be subsidizing Nazification of Ukraine using like Polish proxies and like Latvians or some
Any
shit,
minute now.
which they're positive.
Right.
Yeah.
And frankly, look, guys, like a hunting tip for people that are bored, for the Chinese desk that's like bored out of their fucking minds, go look at Poland and Latvia and Romania and Moldova right now, which are the forward positions that you would be cybering the absolute shit out of to prepare for whatever the next round of insanity is in all this.
So Poland is actually one of the contested spaces in the information war. There's history between Poland and Ukraine, which means that there's not particularly deep fraternal love. And there's sort of been some organic, but also, you know, some external. There's just stuff coming out that's against refugees, it's against Ukrainians, it's against the Nazis who are Ukrainians, and like on and on and on. And that exists as a thing. Like there's an actual, like, just like we have this really one-sided view of like how the Ukrainians are basically happy, cheerful people who haven't lost a single man yet, and, you know, somehow take out nothing but like 20 Russian tanks per tractor. You know, like that's our view.
Hey,
that's
not necessarily to be the case. I'd be more to not have lost anyone. Everyone's nice. There are no Nazis, not even one, right? Like everyone's cool.
Right.
The reality,
I mean, that would be ideal.
Yeah.
Right. So they didn't have that view, or they didn't subscribe to that view. It didn't work on them. So that's a contested space. Moldova has officially asked to get Transnistria back. They've asked Russia to move their forces out and like cede it back to them. So like when you're saying like, look at Moldova absolutely look at Moldova. Like that is going to be the place where things are happening right now. And it's entirely like, if you want to see cyber war where like a country is going to be pressured over the cybers because Russia can't do it another way right now, Moldova is a pretty good candidate. You know, like
whatever we did for, well, this is where some Western arrogance, right? Whatever the hell someone did to help CERT-UA suddenly become a great reporting space that is an actual source of information ahead of most visibility by most threat intel companies. I hope we're doing that for these other nations that are in the phase where cyber matters, which is not bombs falling out of the sky in any way. And I'm super impressed with them. I mean, I go on that blog like once a day and go, oh, look, new shit. And I think that, again, speaks to fog of war. Telemetrical fog of war is the biggest issue in cyber as far as any of us that are not in country are concerned. We are not seeing 90% of what's happening. I'll even recant my statement from the past 2 weeks where I'm like, there was some coordination in cyber because we don't see any of the usual teams. You know what? We're not seeing the usual teams because we're not seeing shit. Like, it's not because they're not there. Let's be honest with ourselves. Let's be honest about our failures. We don't have the telemetry in there. Right?
Absence of evidence is evidence of absence of telemetry.
Yeah, exactly. Another one for the books. That's a proper.
Someone write that down.
Yeah, look, I'm sure that if anyone is seeing shit, it's going to be Microsoft. And again, all praise to Mystic. They have not been taking a victory lap. They have not been attention whoring like the rest of us. I have a feeling that they're busting their asses just working on detections and whatnot. But if anyone has visibility into whatever remains of Ukraine online, it's Microsoft, right? And so someday they'll come and give us like the skinny on what's actually going on in Ukraine.
With luck.
Oh, hopefully, yeah.
Yeah. Someone asked for us to talk about the node, the NPM hack. So, right. So, okay.
Protesting.
Yeah, so this is sort of amusing. So you've got a developer, he decides that like he's going to do his part and he changes his module so that if you are located inside of Russia, your data gets overwritten with Ukrainian flags, which is amusing, but also probably not the best message to send about, open source software. On the other hand,
I don't know much about this.
Is it delete left or whatever it was?
Oh, my point is like, I don't know much about that ecosystem. So if it were a package you're telling me it's like being used by like every Russian government website or something, you're like, okay, it might hit the right folks. But like this just seems
I don't think so.
Out it's just, on like every Russian on a computer. You're like, oh,
yeah, it's just a dick move. But like the thing about the node ecosystem is so completely like it is vile and disgusting, and I cannot imagine how there hasn't been more malware detected. And my assumption is it's just that no one wants to look at it because it's just too messy. Like,
you install detected versus being there, right? Like detected implies that somebody's willing to like do that crap. And, or like that they can tell when it doesn't
npm
work.
Install and you get 1 million files for like you check out a project, you do npm install and there's literally 1 million files are created. Go and audit that. Good luck. Find.
Well, this is the other side of the log4j, log4shell argument, which is the entire internet or an entire subset of important shit is being held together with tape by some poor, like totally unsupported soul in Idaho. And you've built half of your corporate empire on depending on this thing. And it turns out those people have feelings and identities and thoughts, and their moral fiber can go one way or the other. And I mean, fuck you, right? Like, there is no warranty with open source. The lie of open source
is
got their eyes on it. And you're like, no one's got their eyes on it.
It's the exact opposite, right? Like, if you're at a company that's producing a closed source thing, like if it shits the bed, one of your QA people or one of the other developers is going to be mad because he can't do his job.
Yeah.
Right? If your
And
open source
hopefully you
thing
have
shits the
this deal
bed,
where they'll do a
make-
pull request, or they try to fix
Right.
it a little bit. But
Right.
look, we have 50 people invested in the cybers in this chat. Has anyone, hand to your heart, ever gone through an open source project that was working and read through the code?
with the intention of reporting the vulnerabilities so that they can get
Sure.
fixed.
Sure, but like
Out of the
even
goodness
that,
of your
like,
heart.
at that point,
Because
you're
I know
saying,
tons
like,
of people who look for, other than the Linux kernel. No, that's it. That's the exception.
no, I mean, like, you left a loophole big enough for the vuln hunters to go through, right? Like, those are the people who are actually looking specifically for certain failures with a particular reason. But I'm saying, like, the promise of open source isn't for vulnerability hunters. It's some idea that there's
Right. It's supposed to make their job hard.
Yeah, 1,000 devs are just pouring over millions of lines of code every day, making sure that it's the best possible code it could ever be. And it's like, it's a fucking lie.
Yeah.
It's like diffusion of responsibility at a mass
If
scale.
you, yeah, and if you want people to read code, you wouldn't use the GNU style guide, which was a thing, and it still is, and like glibc and stuff. Like, you cannot make sense of what's going on because it is just so fucking ugly. And
I think
you
the
know,
only readable code, and people can come throw stones at me after this, but in my very ignorant, very limited experience, the only readable code on earth is Golang.
Solaris kernel.
It's
The
a language,
Solaris kernel, man.
but I'm saying, like, it's a
Like-
language that's designed with an enforced
Yeah.
style guide. The whole point is you can't save
Yeah.
this or run this unless this shit looks the way it's supposed to look. It has the comments it's supposed to have, and nothing else.
Yeah.
No extraneous variables that aren't being used, no functions that aren't being called, no packages that aren't being used. Like, it is a language that was designed by style guide people, right?
It's a language that was designed by people that knew that you're going to spend far more time reading than you ever will writing. And so that's what they aim to optimize for, and that's great. But this is where I'm going to push back. The Solaris kernel is fucking beautiful. It is a work of art, and I will die on this hill.
Isn't that like some antiquated?
Up to 2.6.
Isn't that some antiquated?
Okay, that's it, motherfucker.
Gotta undust the Solaris. Just look, I'm all for
lost,
it. I'm all for.
I lost my Where is CD. I actually don't have the source anymore.
Look, I've got a Solaris box right there, but I had to buy it like on resale so that we could do Moonlight Maze, and it was like, it was something we had to undust. It was not, just sitting around, right?
Don't make me sad. All right, anyway.
Grug. You're fucking old, man.
Not old. The fucking world just kept going when I was done.
Fair enough. Speaking of that kind of shit, right? CyclopsBlink, while we're talking about, code bases that we have very little visibility into and that are a little antiquated, all this PowerPC malware suddenly pops up. I don't know. So for folks that don't know, the NSA and NCSC a few months back, I want to say, came out with a report about CyclopsBlink, which was their name for what they say is Sandworm's replacement for VPN filter, which was a very interesting operation that people don't really talk about. I don't know that I am comfortable talking about Sandworm in this day and age, but I'm not going to fight the NSA or NCSC on what they they have visibility over that I don't. However, there were no samples. There was just a really nice report from NCSC, because NCSC actually knows how to reverse and write YARA rules that don't suck. So God bless those people. But we had no samples. And then out of nowhere, 2 days ago, like 10 samples of CyclopsBlink just popped up. I hear that it's the CISO for WatchGuard or something that just decided to dump all their samples on there. And it's fucking great. I mean, it's fantastic that we get this. Now, you're sitting there, it's like, look at all this PowerPC malware that goes on routers that none of us have any visibility into. We have no idea if it had any effect in Ukraine. We just know that it was seeded out there. And, and what? What do you do now, right?
Yeah, VPN router devices are basically like the worst thing that's happened to corporate security since forever. They pierce your firewall. They never get updated. You have no visibility. They don't run security software. They're written by like the lowest bidder, and you can't manage the users on them. So you just like add everything and throw it on, and hope it all works. And as soon as it does, you leave it alone.
I think
And
Active Directory would fight you.
yeah, okay, I would say
Wow.
from the outside it's VPN, and from the inside it's AD.
Yeah, it's AD.
And between the two of them, no one is safe.
But like, I mean, this is Soho routers, which I think is super interesting in the sense that, presumably that's being used for some kind of botnet. Maybe it's being used for tunneling. You know who also uses tunnel?
Yeah, everyone uses Soho tunnels. Like that's.
You know who was one of the most active groups using Soho tunnels for a couple of years? Cloud Atlas, the Ukrainians, presumably. No one can find now. Like, we don't know if they got shelled.
And they stopped operating.
No,
right?
I hope they're still around. I don't know what they're up to. But then again, it's a very awkward situation insofar as like our guess about Cloud Atlas was, again, this is total guessing, total like attribution through the grapevine, and I'm probably 90%, I'm probably wrong. But the idea was Red October was a joint operation between the Ukrainians and the Russians. And then when the Crimean crisis happens, and obviously they realize they're not best friends, it splits and suddenly Cloud Atlas starts operating. So our assumption has been that Cloud Atlas is a Ukrainian group. They suddenly started hitting a bunch of, Russian organizations and all the kind of targeting that you would expect. Now, the question is, where the fuck are they now, right? Like, for a while, they were using like UPnP tunnels and like all these things with these routers that made them.
Like, what was their?
But they
were they also just doing phishing or like?
Typical. I mean, you're phishing, whatever. They got their name because they always abused small-time cloud services for their command and control, right? But the question is, right, if we're going to talk about a cyber war, presumably you're talking about two sides of a cyber war. Where the fuck are the Ukrainians in all this?
Right. So speaking of sides, I do want to bring up the IT Army and Anonymous, because Anonymous has come back from the dead and is suddenly actually really, really competent and speaks like an adult who has a professional day job for a change. Like, well, throwing that out there.
Okay, are we going my route of paranoia with hacktivists, or are we going to say there's finally a compelling reason again for people to come put their services forth, right? Like there was Scientology,
the latter.
Then a bunch of assholes doing dumb shit for 8 years, right? And now it's like, okay, now we have a good reason to operate. Is that what's going on?
It's no. Again, I don't think hacktivism is the right word, right? Because these guys are essentially volunteering in a similar way to the people who are going to fight in country, right? They're deliberately becoming combatants in a war. Like they're making the choice to do this stuff. And we've seen, like there's the 79 gigs of emails was dumped from the oil.
Roskomnadzor.
I remember Klaatu Barata Niktu. Okay, so like that was a thing that happened. There's some random lame site, the services of something in Russia that got hacked and defaced with like, the one thing that I thought was cool was they had a link that said how to make 1 million rubles, like or how to make $1 million, and it linked to be like, if you turn in a plane, we will give you $1 million.
Oh, nice.
Which
that was a great.
I think that's brilliant. Like I think that they're absolutely, people should be buying banner ads and running them on Yandex that say, make $2,000 in your spare time. Show us that you poured like the wrong engine oil into your, truck,
sugar
destroyed the engine. You put sugar into your tank, gas engine. We will give you, $5,000 in crypto. Just send us like this is a case for NFTs.
We have smarter people in Can I just cut you off from saying this is the case for NFTs?
Yes, think about it, man. You could actually
The case
take
for
a photo
NFTs was
Yes.
you put Ukraine in an NFT and you sell it to Putin, and we all walk away.
There you go. You can have Crimea.
He owns it. He owns it. The blockchain says that he owns it.
There you
But
go.
no, there's smarter people in the chat who are correcting us on our stats, right? 79 gigs of Transneft, 800 gigs of Roskomnadzor. God.
All right.
Look, I will say this, and I came in actually prepared on this one because I've been trying to pull some of these leaks and trying to, actually process through them. What is the value of the leaks? And I don't mean that in a naive way. I'm a researcher, you're a researcher, Bellingcat is out there. Leaks are fucking awesome in the long run. In the short run, like in the short term, what does a leak do when people don't have the time to pour over 800 gigs of...
Well, you've got 400,000 people who volunteered their time who are not actually actively getting shelled. I mean, I'm not suggesting that you can outsource it. However, there are people who can volunteer who are not in country and have different, like if your risk analysis is, I do not want to go and hack because then I'm actively taking part, but I do read Russian and I don't mind trawling through, a couple of gigs of emails over the weekend. This is what I can do to assist. So
can someone translate them to Mandarin? We have a bunch of analysts that could.
We have so many guys desperate to help.
No, look, I'm not discounting it, and I'm happy for whatever volunteer army wants to do it. I'm happier for the leaks to be out for them than for them not to be there, assuming they're real, assuming they're not poisoned, assuming they're going to be valuable in the long run. I'm just saying we have a model for what it looks like for hacktivists to actually affect this war, and it's the cyber partisans doing. The railway hacks, actually fucking with Russian logistics, actually fucking with the ability of troops to move. It was super creative.
Remember the leaks that they were doing early on when they were getting the compromise stuff that had been kept of all of the corruption, those were leaks that were immediately and directly impactful. And that's the sort of thing that again, there are ways that you can look at a group that has actually been successful. They're punching way above their weight. They have brilliant cops.
We said this at the beginning of the call. I wake up every day and go, God, I hope those dudes are okay. Right?
I'm
at the risk of
worried for them. I mean,
I hope they're fine. I hope they're doing their thing. I hope they're somewhere safe. Belarus looks like an exceedingly dark place we're not paying attention to at all. Their cyber ops are very much involved in what's happening in Ukraine in interesting ways. So the idea, there is an actual other column in Belarus. And we see it more dude, the absence of Cloud Atlas, why aren't you seeing these Russian wipers being deployed back in Russia? Right? Patty wiper, ISAC wiper, hermetic wiper, these things are all built with no safety checks. They don't spread, but it's literally double click the thing and the machine go burr. Just put them right back. Put them back. You had access to Transneft and Roskomnadzor. Have I got a wiper for you? Right?
We're not suggesting anyone actually do this because we do not advocate for doing illegal activities such as breaking the law with cyber and so on. However, were someone to have access after they have exfiltrated their 80 gigs of emails, they could use hermetic wiper, for example, as a way of adding additional friction.
Irony. Just a little irony to the entire situation. I feel naive. I have a really hard time stomaching the dissonance between my perspective of international law or even local law when it comes to cyber and our discussions, right? The general discussions of because I was in I was in an event by the Simpson Center about international law in the Ukraine, whatever. And I say it that way because when we scheduled the event, the Ukraine invasion hadn't happened. One of the people there got sick, so we had to, reschedule for 2 weeks later, and then Ukraine had kicked off. And it was the most bizarre conversation because it was 90% lawyers who want it in the chat and in the call, and they wanted to talk about international law and war crimes and what escalates to what and whatever. And I'm sitting there like, these laws don't fucking matter at
That's
all.
not how it works.
None of this works. Nobody gives a shit. We don't even know half of what's actually happening. The things we do know, we're pretending we didn't see. Like, you guys can come to a postmortem. You can take the cadaver of this situation and
it's gonna
figure out what matters in a few years. But
the perfect analogy there is like, if you find a corpse in Germany right now, the coroner's inquest is going to return, death from blood loss. It leaked out of all of the bullet holes that he had, right? They will not point to Russia has done a thing, and therefore, like, we have to acknowledge that and treat it that way. Like, that's not going to happen, right?
International law violations involving cyber are like, like the
with a nuclear armed fucking nation. Right? You can stick around with Moldova if you want to.
Of this conflict, because like, you have plenty of war crimes already. Why are you looking for a cyber one, right? Like, go fucking deal with the real war crimes that are
attacking humanitarian columns, trying to get into like fucking that besieged city with the confusing name with consonants in it.
This is why or something. Mariupol? No, they're everywhere. They're everywhere doing terrible shit. Look, my point is, why civilians. It's cyber. Like, you're looking for something.
That's because the retainer is only effective if there's cyber stuff going on, and they won't be able to charge hourly rate unless they can give consultations on, but what does this mean for cyber? Like, what does the cyber mean for?
Right? Like, I'm here. Right. Their cyber risk assessment is how I'm going to pay for my kid's school or whatever. Right.
So, my cat's school. But this sort of stuff, like, I think that's sort of what has gotten us here in the first place, is that there's a lot of people who have gotten into cyber over the years from different niches that have not come from a practitioner background or an intelligence background or any sort of, active involvement. And they have looked to make, like, I'm doing law, cyber looks hot, I will do cyber law. Or like, I'd be doing international relations, nuclear is out, but I could still do international relations in cyber. It's pretty much exactly the same thing. And so there's a lot of people with these like skill sets that have been brought in, and they've been trying really hard to make cyber fit. And they've been getting published, they've been, the op-eds, all the stuff that goes out. They're producing a lot of papers that Dave Vitale has to read and suffer through. And
Dante forgot to describe that ring of hell that Dave Vitale.
You sit down with the Talon man. But I mean, actually, what does Talon say about like reusing a wiper against the people that sent it to you, but by a third party on a company that is only partially state-owned and is not actually involved in combat operations?
Like, I'm proud of my ignorance, because if I could spend 30 minutes or an hour reading an ESET or a Mandiant report, or go read some of that policy bullshit, I would much rather spend my time on an actual technical report and not fill my head with bullshit constructions that don't apply, and then don't even get defended when the implant hits the road. All these people are fucking gone. Just poof, like, oh, there you go. Yeah. Or they're writing op-eds like in the New York Times or Washington Post. They're like, it never happened.
The cyber norms. Yeah, like, so where's the cyber norms people? Like, all the cyber war is going to be Pearl Harbor. It could happen any minute now. What happened? Where are they? They've been predicting stuff forever. Now there's an actual war on it.
I think it's also a lack of creativity, right? It's a misunderstanding. Cyber war is a mirage. It's a bullshit construct that doesn't reflect reality. Now we're seeing reality. We need to update the construct. But then the other side of it is they're trying to hold on to the threshold argument, where it's like, well, NotPetya would be cyber war, even though we didn't call it cyber war back then. And it hasn't happened in the NotPetya way. So that's what we're waiting for. And it's like, well, isn't the fact that they could do it before, they've done it before, and now they've chosen not to do it. They're still using wipers, but they're not creating them the way NotPetya was. Isn't that something we should be fucking talking about? That was a decision. They've made almost 5 wipers, maybe 6, if ESET keeps doing their work. Like
there hasn't been another worm since then. That there's Bad Rabbit, but they haven't
Bad
gone
Rabbit
wild.
was quickly in succession after NotPetya, right?
Yeah,
like,
it was just like the NotPetya version 1.1, essentially.
Yeah, and
the slightly upgraded version. But
it's funny because people seem to think that it's because we don't have Eternal Blue sitting around. It's like NotPetya wasn't successful because of Eternal Blue. It was just WMI, Mimikatz, PSXEC, and off you go, man. And that'll work these days.
It was all the same stuff as the Morris worm, right? It was you look for available boxes that you can access. You look at the credentials that you have available, and then you use those to connect normally. And then you do it again from those boxes.
And everything goes to shit.
Yeah, and
right.
Yeah, computers are hard.
We have 3 minutes left, and there's one I know it's like so tight, but like there's one topic we didn't hit that I think is hilarious and amazing, which is the Russia running out of disk space.
Yes. Oh my God.
How fucking amazing is it? Like, especially because when you think about these obtuse laws about like you have to store all Russian data inside of Russia, it's like cool,
all the compliance stuff that they needed for all their monitoring, suddenly it's a problem. Here you go. This is where DDoS can actually be useful. Take up their disk space, start flooding flood their sniffers with garbage that they're going to have to archive. Just get on Yandex and start searching from like the clear text site for how to kill Russian presidents.
You see what we're doing here is helping the Russians by offering them some offsite storage, some backups for their stuff, and then they can get wiped. And they won't have this crisis of disk space.
You're going to have the head of FSB is going to call NSA and be like, "Look, this is really embarrassing, but
the copy of
can you get a copy of our internal database back? We got hit by ransomware."
No modifications, guys. Come on.
Do us a solid.
I mean, people are asking what the story is about this space. The link is in the doc. The short of it is, I mean, you can't get any fucking disks. No one deletes their garbage. Like to quote Silicon Valley, we're at a data apocalypse. We're we're running out. Like the reality
of disk space. They have to use
is that you need ever expanding space. And no one ever deletes their storage. No one ever knows what can be deleted. So it's always adding. If you keep the supply of hard drives, if that runs dry because there's a flood in Vietnam or whatever, then all of a sudden you're pretty fucked as a cloud storage company. And if you have a law that requires you to store all of your data in Russia, and Russia has no hard drives, things are a little tough, right?
Granny's fucking stored pictures are going bye-bye to make room for more VPN logs. Essentially, is what's going to happen.
You gotta start compressing some of that compromat. No more 1080p.
But they're going to cut down on what they've got on, some of the Republican senators. We only need about 20 scandals. You can
They're
get rid of the
already
rest.
in the bag. You don't need to Matt Gates will do some more things in the near future.
Oh boy.
On that career-ending note, thank you everybody for coming to hang out. This has been,
Thanks for joining us.
Tony, Grug, and I, bullshitting our way. So we really appreciate the chat. Grug, you want to close out?
Yeah, sure. Why not? So you've joined us. If you came early, you got to see some behind the scenes footage, which has never before been released. This was a exclusive for this Twitch stream only that will not be available on YouTube. So I'm sorry, guys. You saw it here first. We've covered a bunch of topics, a lot about, like the spectrum of cyber war being, it's people all the way down, politics are involved, like there's no technical law violations, etc. And I think it's worth ending on the amusing note of they're running out of disk space, and like, yeah, people are going to ask like, where were you in the Ukraine war? And they'll be like, oh, it's terrible. I saw a man shot in the street over a thumb drive.
Oh God, that is a terrible note to end on. But yeah, I mean, making light of the disk space situation. I mean, I think it's ironic because of these bullshit laws that were meant to be repressive. Now we're seeing sort of the ground shifting under it. What a great time to start a data center in Belarus or whatever. If that's
in Ukraine, and offer to Ukraine offered to do offloading. But before we end out, I do want to point out, like, it's a human tragedy. We very much are concerned about what's going on. We strongly recommend that you donate to Red Cross or other reputable charities to help people out. And if you're going to do something stupid, don't get caught.
That's a perfect note. Thank you, everybody. Take care, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Support your Ukrainian friends. And see you next week.